Okay, we have all been there. You're staring at a chart that is just so busy, it makes you want to give up before you've even started. Well, today, we're going to tackle that exact problem. We're talking about visual clutter, the thing that quietly sabotages great ideas and tanks presentations. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? A slide pops up, it's a chaotic mess of lines and colors and numbers, and your brain just hits a wall. It's that exact moment you think to yourself, I'm sure this is important, but I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking at. And you just check out. Well, guess what? That ugh feeling isn't just you being lazy. Nope. It's a real, measurable thing. It has a name, it has a cause, and most importantly, it has a solution that we are going to break down together right now. When our brains see these incredibly busy visuals, they don't see information. They see work. And let's be honest, when something feels like hard work, our natural instinct is to just avoid it. And just like that, you've lost your audience's attention, and your whole message goes right out the window. Okay, let's really dive into this. To get why clutter is so bad, we first need to understand what's actually happening inside our heads when we look at a messy slide. And it all boils down to this one simple idea: cognitive load. So think of your brain's processing power like the battery on your phone. You only have so much of it. Every single thing on a page, every line, every color, every word uses up a little bit of that battery. Clutter makes your brain process stuff that adds zero value, just wasting that precious battery on absolute junk. You know, a really great way to think about this is the signal-to-noise ratio. The signal, that's your message. It's the information, the data you actually want to share. The noise? Well, that's everything else that gets in the way. The heavy borders, the distracting grid lines, the extra labels. Our goal here is super simple. Turn up the signal and kill the noise. So how do we even decide what's signal and what's noise? Well, lucky for us, a bunch of psychologists figured this out 100 years ago with something called the Gestalt principles. Now, don't let the name scare you. These are basically the built-in shortcuts our brains use to automatically find patterns and create order out of visual chaos. We're going to breeze through 6 of these principles. And seriously, think of them as your secret toolkit for creating visuals that work with how your brain is already wired, not against it. We can even think about them in 2 main buckets: how our brains group things and how they simplify things. Let's start with how our brains group things. First up, proximity. We automatically see things that are close to each other as belonging together. Simple. Next, similarity. Our eyes instantly connect things that share the same color, shape, or size. And finally, enclosure. If you draw a box around a bunch of stuff, we just assume it's a group. This all happens in a split second. You don't even have to think about it. Now, for how our brains simplify, there's closure, which is how our brain fills in the missing pieces to see a whole object. And this, by the way, is exactly why you don't need a full border around your chart. Then there's continuity, which just means our eyes will always follow the smoothest line or path. And last, connection. You draw a line between 2 things, and bam, your brain sees them as linked. All right, that's enough of the psychology. Now that we get these core principles, these sort of rules our brains automatically follow, let's put them to work. It is makeover time. We are going to take a cluttered real-world chart about IT's support tickets and totally transform it one step at a time. First thing to go, the chart border. It's completely pointless. Thanks to that principle of closure we just talked about, our brain already sees the graph as one single cohesive thing. So, poof, it's gone. Next up, those grid lines. Look, in most cases, they're just visual noise that's competing with our actual data. The second we remove them, the signal, the data lines themselves, just pops right off the page. The contrast is way better. And this idea of making things pop is a really powerful one we're going to come back to. What about those little dots or squares on the lines? I mean, the lines themselves are already showing you the data. The markers are redundant. They're just more stuff for our brains to process for absolutely no reason. So you know what? Off they go. Okay, let's look at the axes. Those trailing zeros like 50.00, they just make the numbers look way more complicated than they are. So let's simplify them. And that diagonal text, it's a huge no-no. Studies actually show it takes us way longer to read. So the goal is always clean, simple, and horizontal. Ah, the legend. It is a classic bad guy when it comes to clutter. It makes your audience do this little dance where they look down at the key, then back up at the data, back and forth, back and forth. That is just wasted effort. Instead, we're going to use the principle of proximity and put the labels right next to the lines they describe. So much easier. And for the final touch, we're going to bring in the principle of similarity.
By making the label received the exact same color as the received data line, we create this instant, intuitive connection. Your brain doesn't even have to think, it just gets it.
Okay, we've removed all the clutter. The chart is clean. It's clear. But we can actually take it one giant step further. We can go from just being clear to being truly persuasive. And we do that by using one more powerful tool to guide our audience's eyes exactly where we want them to go: strategic contrast.
I absolutely love this analogy. Think about it. If you want something to stand out, that's your hawk. It has to look different from everything else, all the pigeons, right? If everything on your slide is bold and colorful, then nothing stands out. It's just a sky full of noise. Strategic contrast is all about making just one thing different so it's impossible to miss.
So let's recap. We started with a standard, pretty cluttered chart. We used those Gestalt principles to methodically strip away all the noise. We focused on making it crystal clear, and now we're ready to see the full impact of this transformation. Now, what's really amazing here is that both of these charts contain the exact same information, but just look at the difference. The before version feels like a puzzle you have to solve. The after version, it just gives you the answer instantly. It's calm, it's clear, it's professional. That is the power of decluttering. See, by finding and removing clutter, you lower that cognitive load for your audience, and you make your message impossible to ignore. This isn't just about making things look pretty, it's about communicating with real clarity and serious impact. So the next time you build a visual, just ask yourself this: what clutter are you going to eliminate first?